Hello, this is episode 35 and this was a very old song of mine which was called Longing. Haven't been playing that for a long time. Yeah, still fun, and today's episode is about a couple of comparisons. First, I would like to compare my AMP1 board that I'm using lately, which means since BluGuitar is around, versus my good old TriAmp setup with my pedalboard. I took the time and the bits and pieces that I actually ripped off this pedalboard and kind of reanimated it again so we can actually hear it. In our last episode we had some multi-channel heads and we actually didn't do the comparison between several channels on one amp. And so today I would like to show you that we can get like several different sounds from the AMP1 or the TriAmp. So like a multi-channel setup with a clean tone, with a crunch tone, with a lead tone, with high overdrive sounds and whatever. So, and the second half of today's episode is let's try and hear if we can have a killer tone also with budget guitars. Of course, I play my 61 Strat as this is my main guitar and it's the reference. So yeah, it's always a good reference to have a 61 Strat. Okay, let's start with the boards. So I was using my AMP1 board, as you could see when I was fiddling around with the replica on this board. Get rid of my backing track thing here and I show you what I've got on my AMP1 pedal board. So this is my clean tone. Okay, I'm using tons of reverb today because of the backing track. My TriAmp does not have a reverb, so this is why I switch it off. And let's go over to this amp. And it's on standby. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. One. So here is the clean channel of the TriAmp. Where's my sparkling eyes? Well, this is the TriAmp clean. Used to be a bit more sparkling. Doesn't matter. Go back to the AMP1 and oh yeah, there's my nice end. See, this is the AMP1 board. Let's check if there's anything wrong with the... This is how, now I remember. Okay, this is, I think I retired that board at the end of 2013. So you can calculate how many years this was ahead. So this was my trick. Okay, I had the clean channel of the TriAmp, but I had the diamond compressor in front of it, and I used the diamond comp to get it a bit more sparkling. So this is the TriAmp, as you can see. Okay, and this was the clean. On the TriAmp versus the AMP1. Okay. So this was my clean sound back in the days, and this is my clean sound today. If I want to move on, here is a nice, slightly overdriven sound from the TriAmp, which was on program number 2. as you can see, I switched from the first channel to the second one, which is kind of a Vox AC30 type. So today I would do this in a little bit different way. I would go here and I have a couple of options. One would be using patch 6 and here. Okay, this is my echo here. Forgot about that. So this is kind of a nice Vox style overdrive. Let's hear that on the TriAmp. Yeah, TriAmp versus AMP1. Both are still on the clean channels, and I'm using the boost on the AMP1 now, and I'm on the 1B channel of the good old TriAmp. Actually, to get a little extra drive, I'm using the Wampler I show you here. That is the TriAmp by itself. And this is the extra little gain I get from the Wampler Plexi Drive. Okay, the Plexi Drive is usually a Plexi Marshall sound, but I use it as a boost pedal. So the gain is very, very low. It's like 9 o'clock. And this gives me just a little bit crispiness. Without kind of a little honk Vox AC30 style. Yeah, and it helps to smoothen the breakup. I like gain pedals at low gain settings for this kind of purpose a lot, because I prefer the amp channel overdrive as it's more dynamic. And then when I have like cascaded gain stages, gain stacking, I have like low gain into the next stage with a little low gain, and that's smoother. That's what I like. Yeah, nuances. But it's about nuances somehow. Okay, my next sound would be the vintage channel here, which is my 80-90% sound that I use 80 or 90% when I play live. And this is so that's my Thomas Blue tone. Okay, let's check that one on the TriAmp. And this is, as you can see, very similar. This is the one. Yeah, it's a little bit darker, And there's nothing wrong about that. It's just darker. I changed the tubes for real old Muller tubes from maybe the 50s even. I have some with the yellow print, which were late 60s, and there are some real old ones from the 50s in this channel because I was into this kind of dark and muddy sound. Nice sound. On the other hand, that's the AMP1. And this is the Mercury Edition. If you would listen to the Silver Edition or the first one, it is a bit more towards that direction. It's a bit darker. Anyway, but you can see I have my kind of signature tone on both systems. And moving on to the classic channel now on the AMP1, and this would be the 3A on the TriAmp. Okay, we are plugged into the AMP1 board right now. Okay, this was the classic channel on the AMP1 board, and now this is the TriAmp. Yeah, sounds very similar, I think. Yeah, something comes alive. Maybe the system is a bit old. Okay, but we heard it. There's a thing why the guitar is not as bright and brilliant when I turn down the volume. And that's a thing because the cabling is totally different on these two boards. The AMP1 board is me going into the board, and then all my pre-effects go directly into the input. And the cable from like the pre-effects to the input of the amp is this long. So I'm talking about 50 centimeters or even less. My TriAmp board has this cable here, which goes, it's a long snake because the pedal board used to be on the edge of the stage, so I could control all my effects. And then, you know, my whatever 8-meter cable had to go from the front of the stage to the back of the stage to do the switching on the TriAmp and getting the signal from the pre-effects into the amp. And a cable length of 8 meters, of course, has some capacitance. And this capacitance is dampening the highs. Even though it's buffered many times, there is a little signal loss. And having shorter cable, like on my new board here, is a huge advantage when it comes for this kind of clarity. I mean, the signal quality in general, I think, is much better on just such a narrow system. You know, everything is much closer. The cable length in general is way, way shorter, and this gives me a much better signal. Okay, there's one more channel here. Let's go back on the AMP1, which is, okay, you can hear it, the modern channel, gainy as hell and rich and thick. And this is kind of in the direction of the TriAmp 3B channel, okay? Okay, let's switch over to the TriAmp, which, no, it's, man. Ah, here we go. So long ago, I forgot about which channel it was. So it was my, oh, that's so loud. Yeah, sounds very good with this. Ah, it's the wrong channel. No. So for me, you know, all in all, I can have my sounds. And now comes the big benefit. Besides that cleaner signal thing, I put the whole thing on a scale, and I was putting the TriAmp and my old pedalboard on the scale, and I found 45 kilograms. So that's some heavy shit to lug around. 45 kilograms. My old system, and of course it was an extra box for the TriAmp and an extra pedalboard and so on, and this is only in one. Versus my new pedalboard with the AMP1 is only, I thought, 13. Can somebody see it? I think 13 and a half. Okay. So 13 kilograms and 500 grams versus 45 kilograms. So this is a huge difference. And on this pedalboard, I already have a blue box, which gives me the speaker simulation, which was not even, it was there as a red box in the TriAmp, but I never used the red box because it was not good enough for my taste. Anyway, so now I'm happy with the blue box and 13 and a half kilograms. So this is my evolution from a pedalboard that I have been using at least over a decade. And this pedalboard has been put up together with the bands I was playing in, optimizing, selecting the pedals, you know, having the right settings for all my different tones, and this takes time. So when we talk about multi-channel heads and multi-channel amps to get different sounds, it takes a lot of time to do a setup where all the sounds are equally good and usable for you in the band. So it takes time to balance out the frequencies, it takes time to balance out the volume difference, and to tweak every sound, like via settings and maybe having some extra pedals here. As you can see, I still have my small stone. I had a small stone. On the old board there was one nice thing, which was my Mojo vibe. Let's hear that. I had that as an option between the small stone and the vibe. The vibe was used for the Hendrix stuff, and the small stone I used for Hendrix and other things. And finally I decided that I just have a small stone for both sounds. But just for you guys, if you are curious to know the difference, I show you. So let's go and show you. This is my That's the small stone phaser on my new board. Okay, let's go and check out my TriAmp board. And I remember the patches being here somewhere. Oh yeah. So this is the true Hendrix wobble in the bass. And this channel is the 2B channel that nobody liked besides myself. This is the most Hendrix channel ever. This is like so thick and maybe even muddy, but I love it because it's so dark. And in the combination with this Mojo vibe is kind of how low can you go? It's like here is the preset with the small stone. And now this versus my new version on a TriAmp, and this is the AMP1. And you can hear the clarity. I mean, this is, you know, there's all the sparkle coming from the guitar is also because of the shorter cables on my pedalboard. So it kind of all sums up. Okay, if you do have any questions on the pedalboards, we can talk, or you feel free to ask, because then I can go into details. Do we have any questions at this point about the pedalboards already? Yes, no? I have a zip here. Cheers. Salute. No pedalboard questions. I tell you something. We can be very lucky that these pedalboards are so quiet, because I spent hours and days and hours to get the cabling right, to get the power supplies right. When you have such a huge array of effects, you face a lot of issues normally. I mean, if you have DC chaining with a power supply, the ground is connected like from every pedal to the next pedal, and that's usually getting problems into hum or squeak or whatever. And finally you have to get a real good power supply. And on both pedalboards, I built my own power supplies just to be sure that we have the right kind of power for these tube-driven pedals and for the transistor pedals, and that everything is separate and that there is no ground loops and all that shit. So be prepared if you have a pedalboard to get a real good power supply, and that might cost some money, but that's always a good investment that nobody sees, but it makes you happy because the hum might disappear. Okay, we have a couple of questions here. Let's see if we can talk about this now. Guba Toro, something about the character of the AMP1 makes me think with some effects and digital cranking could get off a really good Boston sound of Boston out of it. Well, you know, the AMP1 can have lots of different characters, and Tom Scholz of Boston More Than a Feeling. What was it? Wait. Something like this. I used to play that song actually, but I forgot about it. Somebody has to tell me how that song goes. I need to hear it once and I can play it again. Anyway, yeah, Tom Scholz was a killer guitar player, and he was mainly playing Les Pauls, as I noticed, and he had a signature tone, and he was also the inventor of the Tom Scholz Rockman, which was a famous device in my 20s, maybe. I was having one of those Rockman plastic boxes that gave me a clean tone, an overdrive tone, some chorus, and some stereo delay. This was a hip thing back then, and everybody used it. And his studio gear was maybe his old Marshalls with his power soak, because Tom Scholz, I think, was the first one that brought a power soak to the market, which was that device to tame the Marshall head, so you could crank the Marshalls and then get the volume down with turning the power into heat with resistors. So this was Tom Scholz. Okay. Another question here. Rockabilly 12. Thomas, what don't you like about the red box? Well, I designed it too. And to be honest, there is a red box Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4, Mark 5. I don't know how many numbers there exist on a red box now. And the evolution of the red box, I think this is like a Mark 3 in this TriAmp, because the TriAmp was designed in around 2000 or something like that, which is now 20 years ago. And it was not bad for that time, but like every year, the speaker emulations got better, and there was a little competition. Hughes Kettner was actually the first ones to do it, so they invented it. And I was always working on a new one, and then there was some other companies and brands that did their speaker emulation, and you know, every year, mine sounds better, and now theirs sound better, and so it came to a little competition, and by now we are on another level, because we are using IRs, and IRs are a more defined character, because they have much more definition in detail. It's way more complex, and this is what you need to get a real authentic speaker tone. So the blue box here is way better than the good old red box. And the direct out on the AMP1 itself, it is kind of the same technology, but it's kind of the last incarnation of an analog speaker simulation. So the built-in speaker simulation of the AMP1 is the best analog that I could come up with. So, and I went all the way. I had like 7 filters, and I tried everything, and then I stopped somewhere and said, okay, this is it. This is as good as it gets in the analog world, and now we move on to the digital world with the blue box. And you know, for the time, the red box wasn't bad. It was always the best thing that could be done. But time was moving on. Okay. What is the next question? William Lee, does the modern channel sound fit with your Strat? Well, I think the modern sounds killer with my Strat. I just played that one. If we don't go back and forth with this one, I plug in straight into the pedal board without the switching system. As we know, the switching system is also adding a little bit of extra cabling. So now I'm even more puristic, and this is my modern channel. Yeah, so for me, that's this is about the beefiest overdrive tone I get from a single coil Stratocaster, and that's the modern channel. And does it fit with my Strat? Absolutely. I think it fits perfectly. I'm not on the modern channel all night, but if I have the desire of an extra gain moment, there's nothing wrong with a little gain and a little delay, and maybe not the long one like this. Yeah, killer. There's nothing wrong about that. Of course, I designed all the 4 channels on the AMP1 that it sounds good with my Strat. I mean, if I don't like those, who else? So that's my starting point always. And of course, there is room to tweak for you guys with different guitars, with different tastes, and so on. Okay, Osmium Studios again. Hey, these guys are on every episode. One day I visit you. You visit this kind of stream so many times. You are here every single episode. Killer. Okay, the question from the Osmium Studios. Your favorite pedal? May that would be a good BluGuitar product. Aha, power supply. Please send one of the Iridium AMP1s to Christian Kohle for review. Okay, I don't know who Christian Kohle is, but we put that down, and I will check him out. I guess he will be on YouTube when he does reviews, and then we can send him an Iridium. Okay, my favorite pedal, maybe that would be a good BluGuitar product, power supply. The thing about power supplies, to be honest, is if I design a power supply, I have all the questions from you guys about why is my system creating hum? And I leave this to other companies. Sorry guys, I don't go there. I can highly recommend the Gig Rig stuff from the UK. They have a nice system where you have even like DC-DC couplers that replace battery clips for vintage pedals that will sound cool on old fuzz pedals and the sensitive stuff. But anyway, it's not my cup of tea, honestly. Okay, Alexander Rostov Tesev. Okay, sounds very Russian to me, and I've read that name a couple of times. So, okay, hi Thomas. What boost pedals are you used with TriAmp? On my TriAmp, I used many. Well, how do you call it? Boost pedals. It's the way I use the pedals, it's not really boosting that much. Let me go back for the system. You know what? I plug in here straight. We don't need to A/B anymore. I try to be better signal quality. Straight into the TriAmp board and no sound. Why? What is... I have to switch to the other amp because we have to switch the speaker output, remember? Okay, I show you on the TriAmp. I have the the Max Röhrig, which is actually the same pedal like the Daniel D tube booster. It's a German guy called Thomas Reusenstein, another Thomas. And he builds these tube-driven pedals that I kind of like. And this is a cathode follower design. It's a very great basic design that you find in any amplifier. It's where like the two stages are right after each one into the next one, cathode follower. So, back to this. So listen to the difference. There is not much difference because I'm not a guy that wants more gain. I want a different color for my boosters. So this is without. This is with it. It's actually just this little tiny chime that I get, you know, because that's what I'm after. I'm the guy that is hunting the chime. And when I crank the guitar, it's still nice, thick and warm. And similar to when it's on bypass. So this is one pedal. If I want gain from that pedal, easy. But the point is, I don't use boosters for gain because gain is something I can get everywhere. Every unit has some volume and that's gain. I want character. Here, this is going back in my past, the good old memory man. And this is another thing I can have gain. Where's the volume? There's that's the nice trick of the memory man. And you can hear it's humming, it's dirty, it's hissing, it's make all kind of noise, but it's beautiful. The first thing, when you actually listen to the sound difference, it is, again, when I have the guitar on 5, this is bypass. Okay, this is some extra gain. And there's my chime again. So that's what I want about the pedals, and of course this kind of slapback echo, because this is like a bucket bridge delay. More whatever. Okay, at the end I was even using the reflex on top of that, like 2 delays, both in front of the amp and both doing weird shit. Okay, as you can hear, everything vintage with the authentic vintage crackle. Boosters, there's one pedal that I had on this TriAmp. this Cool Cat. It's called a transparent overdrive. And I was kind of rediscovering this pedal today's afternoon when I kind of got this pedal board working again. It's a low gain, mid hump, in your face kind of thing, which I like. Makes the amp, this one, sound a lot more Fender-esque without. Well, actually very boring, but with this pedal, yeah, this is killer pedal. I will revisit this one. So guys, go on eBay and buy a Cool Cat pedal because it's cheap. It's made by Dun Electro. It costs nothing, and it's at least boutique quality, if not even better. So this was my answer for the boost pedals. Any other boost here? No. Small Stone is modulation, Mojo Vibe is modulation. And by the way, this thing here is just a transformer to isolate the tuner because there was a hum prop issue coming from the tuner. You know, you would never expect having a problem with the tuner, but hey, everything that is powered from the power supply has ground, and ground can mess it up. Anyway, good. Next question. 7R4UM, whatever, forum. 7R forum. Clever. Hey Thomas, received the AMP1 Mercury Edition last Friday and I love it. Okay. Nice. Enjoy and have fun with the AMP1 Merc. This one. Okay, next. Guba Toro. I wonder how many sets of frets have been on that Strat. Yes, I wonder too. Because I even had like steel frets one decade. And I played that guitar since I was 17, and I had it refretted about 10 times. And of course, I always hope that the frets last. So sometimes I play other guitars at home, so I'm not wearing the frets too much. Okay, good. Next question here. Kevin J. To me, close miking never sounds like a cab really do. Yeah, the X effect has a parameter that smoothes the zigzag of a frequency response of cab IRs, and it makes it sound in the room. Your thoughts? Actually, these are good thoughts. Close miking in general is a thing. How to describe? I think it's the foundation or the base of what has been used with everybody. I mean, if you go in the studio, first thing you do close miking. When you go on stage, first thing you do close miking because there is a room. But now what we are doing here today is like I go straight into my pedal board and there is no air between what I do and your ears. Maybe you have even headphones and then there is not a lot of air between your headphones and your eardrum. And that sounds always a bit weird because we as human beings have a hearing that needs to have some air molecules around us to know that we are in a room that is real. And so a function that is called in the room, like you were mentioning, Kevin, is something that brings back the air between what the player is doing and your hearing. And that's why I use a little bit of reverb on the AMP1, and in the room, yeah, it's an important thing. So 100% dry is sometimes synthetic. But if you get a good sound, 100% dry, that's the best starting point. So don't try to cheat before you have the substance, the real foundation, you know. First get the good quality and then put it in the room, and then you get the best results. That's always the way I've done it. And also in the studio, I have recorded close mic, and then I was using even IRs for room emulation, like a studio room. You know, there's all kind of emulations of rooms, small rooms, big rooms, and the only issue you have is once you record a room, you have to stick with the room unless you have it on a separate track, so you can blend in as much as you like. So I'm a fan of room, but I want to be free, so I have my dry signal always recorded, and then I have my room effect or my room separate, and then I can still first either change it completely to another room for the mix, or to change it in character, modify it to your sound. Okay, Bluebox has a built-in soft clip, and this is what is also smoothening the sound. This little LED that shows clip is actually pretty nice when it's on the edge between green, 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 and sometimes flickering to red. The red is not, it's not bad. It's just giving you a smooth speaker saturation type of soft clip, which is analog, and it sounds really good. I think it sounds really alive. This is kind of a dynamic thing that makes the Bluebox sound so alive. I mean, doesn't matter if I play the TriAmp or the AMP1 now through the pedalboard. Let's go back here. It sounds already really authentic, and this is because the Bluebox does the job. And the Bluebox looks so simple, and it's maybe simple, but it does exactly what you need for that authentic tone. I mean, that's what I spent all my life in the studio trying to get a good authentic tone, and this tone is always in my head when I design products. And it took me half a year to get the IRs of the Bluebox the way I wanted, and to get the analog electronics to interact with those IRs to make it really rich and authentic. Anyway, that's that question. Next question from Thomas Fellner. My pedalboard is quite similar to Thomas, okay? But I have quite much hum, yeah? Little BT annoying. Yes, a little BT annoying. What kind of power chords do you use? Let me tell you that it is not in the power chords. I use any kind of power chord for this pedalboard. It is due to the power supply, and it's due to the cabling and the separation of the pedals. And I actually cannot make a recommendation because it's so complex. I don't know your pedals. I don't know which order of your pedals. I don't know nothing about your pedalboard. But the problem is this kind of ground loops go on all the way, and so I like power supplies that have separate outputs that are isolated. Look for an isolated output power supply, so every device can use a separate output. That's not a luxury. That prevents the hum most of the times. And sometimes you still have hum, and then it's getting complicated. Then you have to see somebody that knows what to do. Maybe, you know, your local technician or amp guy. Okay, the next question here. I don't know what name that is. Start with an X and then Ritz Q. Bought the AMP1, was convinced when you killed this Marshall Silver Jubilee, okay? But how can I get the Silver Jubilee cleans out of AMP1? Oh man, I think that's not a big issue. The Silver Jubilee cleans is, maybe we didn't do that in that episode, but my tip is start on 5 with the volume. If you have a Les Paul, start on 7 or 8 with a single coil guitar. And then put the tone controls in the middle and dial in the custom control from one to the other side. And you will be pretty close to a good tone. And the Silver Jubilee has a good clean tone, yes. And somewhere in this setting you will find a good starting point. And then you can tweak it a little bit. Sorry, I didn't do the straight A-B thing. And of course, you know, there's so many setting options on a Silver Jubilee as well. Okay, next question. The Alexander Rostov-Tevsev. Okay, how to make tone like in your song in the last show on both amps? And what amp pedals was on the original record? Thanks. What amp and pedals? Okay. Let me read it again. How to make tone like in your last song, the last show on both amps. What was the song in the last show? Are you talking about the one? I think we played a clip from the orchestra. Yes. And, well, this was exactly this pedalboard. Exactly this pedalboard. What was the song? The song was... this was... I played Toccata. Well, let's go back to this pedalboard and I can prove that it was this pedalboard. And so on. So, okay, I wasn't using that much replex, but this was my pedalboard. And this is exactly what you hear on... So, I'm on my vintage channel, and that's it. It's the replex. It's the replex, my vintage channel, and my pedal delay. No extra Wampler, no extra reel tube, no extra compressor. That's it. Sorry. Very simple. Put the gain on 10 and use a Strat that has a treble bleed capacitor. It does not need to be this expensive vintage. No, I'm not talking vintage. Real vintage guitar. It can be a cheap vintage, an affordable vintage like my signature model. So this wood is not from 1961. This wood is... Okay, it's not exactly as good as my 61, but if you wouldn't have time and a reference, can you really tell? Okay, the rest is in the last episode. And then we played, of course. And I had a drop D tuning. Okay, this was this question. Next question, Mick Rose. Which components, pedals on your new board are still built by yourself? Okay, basically it is the power supply, which you can't hear. It's just making it clean and catering all the pedals. And built by myself is this little Keeley mod. This is this standard, and this is like darker delay repeats. You can find it on the internet as the Keeley mod. And this boost pedal here. It's like a boost buffer pedal that does a tiny little bit like what the Memory Man is doing. So I wanted to have a buffer, and as you know, everything I like is a little color that makes my Strat sound better. So that's homemade, and that's kind of the Memory Man meets an EP3 meets a neutral. It's not about gain. It's a touch of color, and it's a touch of how you describe it, cleaning up the signal a bit nicer. So that's that's homemade, and the rest is stock. Yeah, and I modified the Replex to have a few more time slots here. I mean, basically this is a 5-position switch or 4-position. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 4-position. Okay, so I have like 3 trim ports here, and the last one is the internal delay time. It's just to dial in delay times, and it's faster than finding the right tempo. But this has nothing to do with the sound. And the other mods is one for the studio to kill the dry. It's here. So it's only delay only. And this is kind of the dry on. And this is a capacitor, which is the difference between a Replex from the very beginning, which is this sound. It's a bit darker, and this is the real deal, authentic Echoplex Mark I version. And this is my modification, a slightly brighter. And this is what you get also with the later series of Hughes Kettner's Replex. Nobody knows which serial number it is, but if you have a later one, that will be a bit brighter, and that's the difference. So that's about my homemade stuff on my pedalboard. Okay, Marcel, hi Thomas. Which patch cables do you use in your preamp section and of your pedalboards? Any experience with summer cables? I like them very much. Yes, I have to admit I know summer cables, and I used to have them here, maybe downstairs. Of course, every cable manufacturer has different series, and I like the one that I have, which is, forgot about the name. So on my pedalboard, this is kind of a special Teflon cable, high-end shit. Some hi-fi friend of mine, high-end guy, sold it to me. He said, I have some left over here. Yeah, give me 50. And so I bought like 2 meters of cable, and I used it for my pedalboard. It's kind of stiff cable, and it sounds good. Don't ask me what it is. It's good, expensive cable that I bought cheap. And on my old board, you can see sometimes I use RG58, which is kind of the what you call that? It's a cable number that is used also for transmission stuff. It's very low capacitance. So that's the thing about what's on my pedalboard. Okay, Kevin J again, question. Somewhere guessing Henning HP, amp designer video. I heard that you don't like character nose mid in amps. I love it though. Okay, amp is still something for me. Is AMP1 still something for me? Hey, okay, let's make this clear. I probably, the quote is that I don't like amps that have a nosy mid-range. I want to have an amp that is kind of nice and open, that has more a flat response, because if you want mids, it's such an easy thing to get your own mids into the sound. You can have either an EQ or a pedal, or just like what I'm doing here with the Plexi Drive. This is without a Plexi Drive. And this is, let's get the noisy. This is the vintage channel of the AMP1 Pure, and it doesn't have the nosiness. But now I bring in this Plexi Drive pedal. And I can have that nosiness. Or I have the real tube driver and I have another nosiness. So that sounds killer to me when I have a classic rock overdrive channel and not a fixed nose, so I can have my own design nose with it, with a pedal. Or I have my high gain channel, like the modern channel. There is no pedal in front of that. It's just pure modern channel on the AMP1, and this already has a certain nose when I dial in the tone counterclockwise. So I would say, if you quote me on this, you're totally right, because I like amps that have a sound that is still neutral in a way. I mean, not just one character and that's it. So I can have combinations with guitars that I hear the difference. If the amp by itself has a certain nose all the time, I can play any guitar with that amp and it doesn't show my guitar as much. And the amp should be flexible, so it has some sounds that is really, you know, unbiased in a way, uncolored, and some sounds that have some character. And that's what I want from an amp. So this is my quote. Sorry for this long explanation, but okay. Anyway, next, Alfons Lücker. I know Alfons Lücker from the internet. Is this the standard Summer of Love guitar, or do you change anything? So this is a standard Summer of Love guitar, but it has my Klopman pickup set. So this is this is as good as it gets in the world, and sounds killer. Maybe we can have a few other guitars comparing this. So let's get another vintage guitar. Ooh, this falls. Okay. We have this Icon Series V6. So this is a standard, nice vintage. So this is like all stock, and of course it sounds a bit different because it's a maple neck, but this is, yeah, this is a very affordable guitar, and it sounds, you know, this is my setup. This is actually affordable guitar, nice strat, and everything stock. And this doesn't even have the treble bleed, which is like my signature modification on the guitar. And we have another one, just talking strats. This is another Icon series. I don't know. This is the one with the humbucker and 2 single coils. So this is something HSS, like many people. Yeah, and by the way, this is the nice nosiness we are talking about, and this comes from the pickup. When I, this is the sound. Now I switch for the neck pickup and now I switch for the humbucker, and there's my nosiness, okay? You get it. Okay, next guitar. Let's look into the Les Paul territory. And maybe I start with my super expensive gold top, which is not an original 1957 gold top, but I've done everything to the guitar to make it as close to my dream 1957 Les Paul, which is an 1968 Gibson Les Paul converted to the 57 specs. A special set of pickups, blah, blah, blah. So this is anything I can do. So, I have this very affordable vintage black over sunburst and this. Okay, so nothing wrong about that guitar. And we have more. There is another, let's try maybe a Harley Benton. Yeah. And by the way, this is still Wilkinson pickups in the Harley Benton, so. Okay, here you can hear, it sounds pretty cool, but the definition is not the same like on on my Gold Top, for instance. So the whole thing gets a bit muddy, but hey, it still sounds rich because the amp sounds rich, It's like you can play anything with such a guitar. I can play a gig with this. There's nothing wrong. Yeah. The only thing on this guitar is the switch is vice versa. Your neck pickup is on the treble. So turn the wiring around or the sign and it's okay. But hey, this is, for the money, it's unbelievable what you get for the money these days. So more guitars. Let's see, we have this guitar. Oh, we have another vintage. Just for fun. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. And this is again with the Wilkinson hardware. It's the Peter Green model with the kind of nasal in-between tone. So that's the vintage, and then we have a Epiphone. More nasal. Yeah. Here I'm missing the definition. I mean, in the higher register, no problem, but just to show you where we're coming from, which let's hear my Les Paul again. So we have a reference, how it should sound, at least to my ears. So if you ask me about an affordable guitar or a cheap guitar, and does it sound great with the amp? Well, the amp is the amp, the guitar is the guitar. I think today you get pretty good guitars at very low price. And of course, it gets exponentially high in price when you want to have the last percentage. And this kind of is what I'm going for, of course, because I'm professional. And I hope I can play more gigs for you guys very soon. So I want the best, and I pay anything that it takes. And I mean, I'm not paying for a real Gold Top because this is like six-figure numbers, not my price range. But I kind of copy everything that I discover on the real deal guitars and put those into an affordable thing. And this is an affordable thing for that kind of project. And of course, it can be done on a very low even on lower price range levels like vintage or Harley Benton or what was the other one? The Epiphone, and many others. For me, the point is, what about playability? Most of these affordable guitars, they can have great playability if you do a proper setup job. So if you buy a guitar super cheap, maybe you invest some money into a setup job with somebody that actually has the clue how to get the best out of a guitar, because there is some magic even in the tone when you know how to set up the neck, when you know how to set up the strings, when you set up all these little details, and you get an extra percentage out of that. And this is not even changing any pickups, pots, wiring. So me being the electronic kid, I always dig into the pickups with my friend Andreas Kloppmann, because he knows what I want, and I can have him wind my own style pickups. And if I would use stock pickups from some other brand, I would still check the pots, because the values are critical to the pickups. If the values are too low, the guitar gets dull maybe or darker, and it loses the expressiveness because of the resonance peak of the pickup will be damped and it will lose some definition. So I always check for the values of the pots, and of course on the Les Paul, like the capacitors are super important. And I like 50s wirings. These Les Pauls, they all have 60s standard wiring. So the first thing I do is I have a different wiring, the 50s wiring you find in the internet. And the next thing is I check the electronics, I check the cabling, and then I check the capacitors. And there are capacitors that are not expensive as bumblebees. This guitar has a real bumblebees, but there's other capacitors which are 10 times better than the standard shit, but costing not too much. I mean, such a capacitor here costs whatever, $50, one capacitor only, because it is the holy grail, and we all pay for the holy grail. But that is just that's one option. I think you can have a real good tone with a standard guitar, and I can do my thing on my vintage signature models easily. I've been touring with this guitar. When I go to other countries, I never take my 61 Strat with me anymore, because I got stuck on an airport there, and I mean, it hurts when you see this thing is leaving to the belt, and maybe it will disappear and nobody will see it again. So I came to the conclusion, I play my Strat at home. I play, or at home means in Germany, and when I can travel with my car. But I hate to take it on a plane, because I've been surprised with airlines. And then I'm lucky I got my own signature guitars. And for my personal thing, I can do it with my standard signature guitar easily. And this is the one that I even pimped with the Kloppmann pickups. That gives me another percentage. And then, hey, I can do my thing and nobody notices anything. This is the guitar that I play every Hendrix show, you know. yeah, so well, my summary would be, if you have an affordable guitar, there is nothing wrong about it. If you like the action, if you like the sustain, if you like the playability, and then whatever you can tweak and doesn't cost too much money, could be using a little booster here. You know, when I need something, I can, for instance, turn this knob here and get more sparkle or less. You know, have subtle things from a pedal and spend some time with doing a proper setup job. I found that you can get like 30–40% out of an instrument sometimes just because the setup was not right. And get the neck straight. So if you have first fret, last fret, and then there is just like a tiny distance in the middle of the fretboard. On the other hand, you know, the strings height, I can have a little click here. This is the way I like to have my Strat set up, because if it's too high, it's getting too dark. I have no Strats kind of pling, plang, pling. This is what I like about the Strats. And of course, if you have a different style, you have a different setup. But what I'm saying is there is a lot of potential on guitars unused just because the setup is not perfect for you. Yeah, so that's the thing when you buy a boutique guitar like a Paul Reed Smith. I have to admit, these guys have spot-on quality out of the box. You open the case and half of the quality of the guitar is the setup, because it's such a perfect setup job. So I'm kind of a little bit jealous on that, besides the quality of the guitar. But what I'm saying is, yeah, get a proper setup, do a couple of tweaks if you miss something, and most important thing is that you feel great with the instrument. It does not need to be that $10,000 vintage Strat or $20,000 vintage Paula Telecaster, whatever, or 100,000. If it's a good instrument that makes you feel great when playing it, this is what it's about. And it can be a cheapo. There's nothing wrong about cheapos. Okay, I think we had all guitars here. Any more questions? Hi Thomas, on your signature guitar, if it has a reason or different sound, why it has a reverse headstock? I have two different kind of signature guitars. One is the reversed headstock with the Hendrix Cosmetics, which is called the Summer of Love. And then there's like a straight copy of the 61, which is Olympic white with a straight headstock, just like that one. So that's another signature model. But it's using, both guitars use the same electronics, with my treble bleed capacitor that gives me all this shimmering high end on the low settings of the volume. Did you notice I'm only on 2? And this is where the magic comes. And then yeah, that's what I love. Okay, maybe I'm the only one that plays the volume on 1 and 2, but this is where I find the best tones. Just, you know, out of the noise floor, you can hear this little noise. Yeah, and then crank it to 10. That's my thing. Okay, anyway, reverse headstock on the Hendrix model. Guberturo sounds a bit French to me. I remember trying to do long 4 cable method runs with the AC30 for a long time, and I always hated that it did to my tone. Yeah, what it did to your tone. Didn't seem to matter what buffers, etc. I tried to use. It always lost the magic. That's the point. I mean, an AC30 is such a beautiful amp that has all this chime. I mean, maybe you have seen mine on some episodes. On the very early ones, I had some AC30 and the Brian May episode, blah, blah, blah. And the AC30 is about a chime, and the chime is about the most sensitive thing for a guitar, because when it's gone, it will never come back. Any kind of treble that you put in afterwards is harsh because it's artificial. The chime comes from a lot of treble before overdrive, at the very beginning. If everything is kind of really open, if there's no frequency roll off by a bad cable or by a big load. Of course, for super high gain sounds, you don't need that, but for this kind of AC30 and me, the vintage guy, that's the magic. And you shouldn't kill your great amps with shitty cables. So buy good cables, get short cables, and do clever setups with short cabling. That's the way it helps. You could hear on my setup, my little evolution. Okay, one more question here down there. Anyone know what the deal is with the headstock inlay on his gold top? I don't know that I have seen that on a 60s Les Paul before. I'm not the biggest expert, but let me explain what I heard about it. Oops. So this inlay here, you're talking about this kind of special inlay, whatever that is. This has only been seen in 68, I think. And I have another gold top downstairs, which is a bit younger, which is 71 or so. That doesn't have this. So this is like the first year of Les Pauls that have been manufactured after the break from like 1960. Gibson stopped manufacturing Les Pauls, I think, after 1960, and they went for the SGs. And then in 68 was, I believe, the first year that Gibson was doing the Les Paul standard again. And this is the first year of that period. And this is, somebody told me you can see this inlay that tells you it's a 68. The serial number is 98568, maybe 7, maybe. So it's hard to see. If the camera can show this, that's the best camera in the world. You don't see that, huh? No. Okay. That's, you know, this guitar has been, you know, modified a little bit, so the serial number had suffered. Okay, what is more question? Oh my God. Robert Donoso Büchner. There are a lot of preamp pedals, also tube pedals on the market. What preamp do you like and why? Preamp pedals and tube pedals. Oh man, I know there's a couple. It's too long that I actually used some of those. I mean, you know, there is like the Diesel VH4 preamp. There is Victory has a few. To be honest, I plugged in and I thought, oh, it's cool. Next, because it's all in my AMP1, I don't need. And the last time I really played preamp pedals. No, there, you are right. There are some cool preamp pedals on the market, even with tubes. Um, but I lost interest personally, and that's why I can't tell you my favorite. I would check out, some of the boutique brands, and I'm sure they have some nice sounding pedals, and then you can plug them into the AMP1 Mercury Edition effects return, and then you will find out after buying a preamp pedal that costs as much as the AMP1 that the built-in preamps sound probably the same. Shit. But feel free to make this experience, no problem, because I make this experience all the time. Anyway, so Alex Ross, hello Thomas, do you remember your song The Late Show? Yes. How to make this tone? It was killer tone on the record. Okay, The Late Show, this was for my very first album called The Beauty of Simplicity, and the title of that album was killer because I recorded all that stuff and I tried to play my ass off, and then when I listened back to the mixes, I thought, the moments where I don't play too much, which is actually not the song you're talking about, were the moments that I like the best. And this was the slow songs, and then and the simple stuff. So I came to the idea that a name of The Beauty of Simplicity is something that I learned from that album. There are a few beautiful moments, and there are the simple ones. But back to this thing. This was actually my rack system back in the days. I used to have an Axis Hughes Kettner rack system with a VS250 and a homemade preamp, which was a heavy modified whatever tube machine from Hughes Kettner, which I kind of put a Soldano preamp in there. It is actually next door, so that's nothing you can buy, but it's something I could compare to the modern channel on the AMP1 now. That's kind of that sound. Yeah, maybe I show you this in a future episode, because that kind of half 19 rack space unit is still there. I don't know if it's still working, but it's there. I've seen it just when I was cleaning the room. Okay, next question, the Sterling sound. Thomas, over the years, have you started playing with less gain? Well, it goes and comes in waves. I had a phase with more gain, like in this song we are just talking about. Then I had a phase with lower gain, like on the Electric Gallery album. And then I think there's a magic in low gain and there's a magic in high gain. And I'm always torn between the two worlds. When I listen to Yngwie, I know I can't do it on clean, and he neither. So you need some gain for that. Sweep and fast playing, and also for the screaming. But on the other hand, a nice clean tone or a raunchy, cleanish tone can be magic. And it's, one day I discover the low gain back, and the next day I discover the high gain back. So I'm always in between the worlds, and maybe my place is in between. And I would not confess myself as a low gain or high gain player. So I have the range from low to high, and I love the in-betweens. Sorry, complex answer, but this is, yeah, I'm all. This is why I use the medium gain the most, and then turn down the guitar to low gain. But then 3 notes later, I crank the volume to 10 and it's medium gain. And then sometimes, boop, I'm on the modern channel and I play high gain. All good. Okay, next question. Osmium Studios again. Glenn has done comparison between tubes and there was no difference. What is your take on that? Yeah, let's put it that way. Tubes. I saw the video. But of course, Glenn Fricker, we are talking about a metal guy, and his creed, so to speak, is to say, You can invest in a full quartet for your Mesa Boogie and pay whatever, a couple of $100 or euros, whatever, and the difference is that much. And I would agree on that. I would say there are a few exceptions. If you are totally relying on the power amp tubes on like a GTM 45, which this gives you the full character of the tone, I would say maybe you should look after your power amp tubes so they are in perfect condition or they are the perfect tubes for you. I found this out when I was buying my GTM 45 from 1965 and trying out different tubes. And this amp is very sensitive to power amp tubes, but I think that's a real exception. Most other amps get some working tubes and some good, there's some good affordable tubes, and don't care about that too much. It is, you don't need to get a new pair of tubes every year unless they really die. And me personally, I love the tubes always when they are on the way to die anyhow, because when they don't perform right, they have more character. You know, you have more to fight with it. Listen to my TriAmp, you know, it's kind of almost off. It's like, yeah, but there's a beauty in this mortal sound. Anyway, okay, next question. Max K was wondering if it does matter if the first pedal in the chain is buffered or true bypass. Yes, absolutely. So if you have the first pedal or an early pedal with a buffer, the rest of the signal path will be low impedance, which means the cabling will have less influence. So make sure you get a good pedal. And by the way, the Holy Grail Tube Screamer, which is here, the ultimate collector's item, was always a buffer. Because it's not true bypass, you know, the true bypass came later. And this buffer amp actually sounds pretty good. I mean, Stevie Ray Vaughan just had 2 of those in series. Even if they were switched off, the buffer amp was in his tone. And Stevie Ray Vaughan doesn't have a bad tone, so there's nothing wrong about a Tube Screamer buffer. Okay? Next question. Max Carton Guitar. Have you tried the Solo Dallas Shaffer replica? Yes, with AMP1 is my #1 effect to get a huge tone. So the Solo Dallas Shaffer is the circuit that Angus Young used, Angus Young of AC/DC, of course, used in his single path. There's the story goes that Matt Lang, who is the producer, asked Angus in the studio, "What's wrong with your tone?" Angus was not feeling right, and then he found out, "What's the difference?" "Well, on stage I always play my wireless system." And then he plugged in the wireless system in the studio and found, wow, there's my tone again, here's my sound. And this wireless system has a little bit of compression, this has a little bit of a treble boost effect. It's kind of a boost pedal with many little aspects to it. It's just a ton. And this, it's kind of a big thing, the Shaffer. I played it with AMP1, it sounds killer. I mean, it's a magic combination. Yes, I tried it with AMP1 and I like it. It's just too big to put on my pedalboard, otherwise it would be on my pedalboard already. Yeah, so that's a great pedal. A bit too expensive, a bit too big, but a killer tone. Okay, and next. No, I have you do, okay. Hi Thomas, which picks do you use? Thanks. Well, I use a couple of picks, and I have to show you my picks. There's more in the pocket. Aha. So this is money, German money. This is the home plate picks like we have in the shop, and that's the Ritchie Blackmore shape. And I have these picks out of a special plastic which is harder than ABS, as you can hear. Then I have the same pick in even harder material. Then I have the V picks, which are the big ones. And then I have my holy grail materiel forbidden, which is the stuff everybody dreams of. Some people call it tortoise, and this is what I'm using. So these things sound the closest to the other things. That's why I have those. Okay, Mick Rose again. Which guitar cable brand is your favorite choice? Only great speaker cables in your portfolio. Okay, we have our own speaker cables, yes. These speaker cables we brought out because I couldn't find any brand that was offering a speaker cable with that kind of character. I mean, maybe you think I'm crazy, but speaker cables also have a tiny little bit different character. Somebody is trying to pick up a speaker cable, but here, I can unplug it from the amp so we can see it. This speaker cable here, it's a weird story. I told this before, look it up. So that's what we do. If we are talking about guitar cables, currently I'm using these Klotz cables where I'm plugged in here, and there is a Klotz Bonner Massa cable that is actually pretty good. Wait a minute. This is the other end of it. I like them angled because then they put in here, and this is this cable here, and they are 6 meters long or something. They're pretty good for stage use, and yeah, I like that. But I like also a Flex cable, which is downstairs. Well, this is kind of a braided cable and is very stiff, but this used to be my favorite cable for many, many years. The problem is it's so stiff that it breaks every year. And so my cable got shorter and shorter every year because I had to cut it, new solder joint. So, and anyway, that's the Flex by Spectraflex, that's the company. Yeah, and you know, that's the stuff that's lying around here. You have to try with your guitar. Sometimes there's better matches. Not every cable sounds good with my Strat. I prefer like cables that do a little color to the Strat, like the Flex, that gives a little bit growl. Maybe you think I'm stupid, but I found that on a Flex cable. And the funny story goes, I met the guy from Spectraflex, and he said, I have the problem with the breaking of the cable. It has a lifetime warranty, but who cares? Every year I break it because I use it so much. And then he said, we have a cable that is even more flexible. It's just as good as your Flex. It's just more flexible. And I thought, okay, fine, I buy that one. And I tried it at home, and it doesn't sound like a Flex. It sounds like an okay guitar cable. And the Flex has some magic. So anyway, try a cable that makes your guitar sound the way you want to hear it. The cable is basically a dampening factor, and less can be good if you have a muddy sound, but if it's too bright, some little dampening can help. And get your guitar, get your amp, do your setting, and then just swap cables until you find the right for you. Well, anyway, I told you my favorite. Next question here down there. Max Carton guitar. They make a Shaffer stomp pedal now. Ah, okay, that's exact tone, but the size of a tube screamer and 9 volt. Love it, and will probably buy an AMP1 as backup for my Marshall amps. Well, if you have a Marshall amp, an AMP1 will sound pretty much in your ballpark. And okay, I will check out the smaller pedal then. A friend of mine who's living really close here has the big one, so I can do the AP comparison and double check if it's really as good as the big one. But thanks for the hit. Alex Ross, did you have an idea to hold a competition on your some backing track? It will be very fun and interesting prizes. It does not matter. Your opinion and review is the best prize. That's actually a cool idea. We could make a little competition with some backing tracks. I put it on the list for next year, and it would be nice for me to hear what you do with that. I mean, on YouTube I see some guys doing covers of my songs, and especially I love some Asian guys because it's so different. But then again, I know how they feel, because it's like I can feel where they're coming from, and then they get it, and they're working on it. It's, to me, it's a great thing, great idea. Heinz Chischka, Vovox or Monster? This goes back to the cable thing. I'm more Monster than Vovox. Vovox is ultra clean, and I'm a vintage guy which is in search of more character and not cleanness or sterile tones. So I'm more a Monster than a Vovox. Okay, next question. Sterling Sound, on your Go Top, which bridge and tailpiece do you use? I find this really influences the tone. That's correct. So which bridge and tailpiece? Guys, I'm honest, this is an original 60s Gibson ABR bridge. This is the real deal. And I find this also very important, so I paid some real money for this almost wrecked original bridge, and this makes the sound to the original tone. Yeah, so that's, and the same thing goes with this. I think this was all the questions for now. Okay, I know Christmas is approaching, and in case you want to make yourself a gift, we still have some refurbished amps for a special deal, and there will be higher prices next year for many reasons. For the Germans anyway, because of the Mehrwertsteuer, the tax will go up, and we have also a general increase for the AMP1s. So now is the time to make yourself a present. And you can go from the online shop, or you go to your local dealer. That's the kind of, we support our local dealers, but we also have an online store. I think that's it for today. We are over time again. It's been a pleasure to have my old companion with me again. Seeing that it still works, but I'm not missing anything actually, besides the Mojo vibe. There was something in the Hendrix moment here that makes me think about maybe. We'll see. Okay, big pleasure. And join in next week. We will have another episode, and this is the day before Christmas, I guess. I don't know yet what I'm doing, but there will be something special. So stay tuned. See you next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.